Before we dive deep, write this in the comments. Some memories don't belong to us. It sounds strange now, but trust me, it's going to hit different in a few minutes. This isn't just another story you'll scroll past and forget. This is something that might shake what you believe about death, memory, and whether love can actually survive beyond the grave. Maybe you've lost someone so important that part of you refused to accept they're really gone. Maybe you've wondered if the people we love leave traces behind, echoes that somehow find their way back to us. What if death isn't the end of love, but just love learning how to speak a different language? This story has layers. It starts as a scientific investigation, becomes a mystery that defies logic, and ends somewhere you won't see coming. And maybe, somewhere in the middle of it all, you'll recognize something about your own losses. Even when you think you know where this is heading, even when the most powerful moment seems to have already happened, wait. What unfolds in the final minutes will change how you see everything that came before. If this story moves something in you, if it makes you think about someone you've lost or wonder about mysteries we can't explain, hit that like button and subscribe. This isn't just about watching content. It's about being part of conversations that matter, stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. A 3-year-old girl in rural India begins speaking fluent Hindi about a husband she's never met and children she's never had. Dr. Sarah Chen, a skeptical historian from Oxford, arrives expecting to debunk another false claim. But when Lil Kavya leads her to a house 200 miles away and calls a stranger my beloved Arjun, Sarah's scientific worldview shatters forever. The dust from the Jeep had barely settled when Dr. Sarah Chen stepped onto the cracked earth of rural Rajasthan, her Oxford credentials feeling suddenly insignificant under the blazing Indian sun. She adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses and pulled her notebook closer to her chest, a shield against the superstitions she'd spent 15 years systematically dismantling. "Dr. Chen?" A weathered man approached, his hands pressed together in greeting. "I am Ramesh Sharma. Thank you for coming so far." Sarah noted curtly, already mentally cataloging the familiar elements: desperate parents, isolated village, and undoubtedly a child coach to perform for attention. She'd seen it dozens of times across 3 continents. Where is she? Kavya is inside, but... Doctor! Ramesh's voice trembled. She speaks of things, impossible things, things that make my wife cry every night. The modest house seemed to hold its breath as Sarah entered. Sunlight filtered through cotton curtains, casting dancing shadows on the earthen floor. In the corner sat a small girl with enormous dark eyes, carefully braiding the hair of a cloth doll. She looked up as Sarah approached, and something in that gaze made the historian pause. "You came from far away," Kavya said in perfect Hindi, though she knew her parents spoke only the local dialect at home. "You came from far away. I knew you would come. Mira told me so." Sarah knelt down, maintaining professional distance. "Who is Mira, Kavya?" The child's face transformed with adult sorrow. "I am Mira, but I'm also Kavya now. It's very confusing." She touched her small chest. "In here, I remember my Arjun. He has a scar above his left eye from when he fell from the mango tree as a boy. He cries for me every night." A chill ran down Sarah's spine despite the oppressive heat. She'd never encountered a child so young speaking with such emotional depth. "Tell me about Arjun." Kavya closed her eyes, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of lost love. "He makes the best chai with extra cardamom, just how I taught him. Our kitchen has blue tiles. I chose them myself from the market in Jodhpur. And the jasmine bush by our window, I planted it the day after our wedding." Sarah's pen hesitated above her notebook. These weren't the vague, coached responses she expected. The specificity was startling, the emotion devastatingly real. "My babies need me," Kavya whispered, tears streaming down her 3-year-old cheeks. "Stevie still has nightmares, and Priya won't eat unless I sing to her. Who will take care of them now? The room fell silent except for the child's quiet sobs, sobs that seemed to echo with the grief of a mother separated from her children. Sarah felt something crack in her carefully constructed skepticism. Sarah spent the next hour in methodical questioning, her academic training warring against the growing unease in her chest. She'd interviewed hundreds of supposed reincarnation cases, but Kavya was different. Where other children offered fragments and inconsistencies, this little girl painted complete, vivid pictures of a life that felt impossibly real. The blue tiles in our kitchen, Kavya continued, her small hands gesturing as if she were still there. They have tiny white flowers on them. I saved money for 3 months to buy them. Arjun said they were too expensive, but I told him, our home deserves beauty. Sarah scribbled furiously, noting not just the words, but the way Kavya's expression shifted, becoming older, wiser, filled with the pride of a woman who had made her house a home. And your children, Sarah pressed gently, though the word felt strange on her lips when addressing someone barely out of diapers herself. Tell me about Ravi and Priya. Kavya's face crumpled with maternal anguish. Ravi is 4 now, or maybe 5. Time is so strange here. She touched her forehead, confused. He's afraid of the dark because of the storm that broke our window last monsoon. He crawls into bed between Arjun and me, and I sing him the song about the brave little sparrow. Without warning, Kavya began to sing in a clear, sweet voice. Chichya rani urti jai, sapnom men kushilai. The melody was haunting, distinctly regional, and Sarah felt goosebumps rise on her arms. My Priya, Kavya whispered, her voice breaking. She's only 2. She has my eyes, but Arjun's stubborn chin. She won't drink milk unless I warm it just right and add a tiny bit of honey. She calls me Mama, and the child dissolved into heartbreaking sobs. Sarah found herself leaning forward, her professional distance crumbling. This wasn't performance. This was pure, devastating grief. She'd seen enough genuine emotion in her research to recognize the real thing, and this 3-year-old was mourning with the depth of a mother separated from her babies. Kavya, Sarah said softly, can you tell me about the house, the rooms? The little girl wiped her tears and nodded. When you walk in, there's a red curtain with golden threads. Arjun's mother gave it to us, though she never really liked me. A sad smile crossed her face. The main room has a photograph of Arjun's father on the shelf. He died when Arjun was 12. Next to it is our wedding picture. I wore my grandmother's sari, the yellow one with green peacocks. Sarah's hand trembled as she wrote. These weren't generic details a child might imagine. They were specific, personal, layered with the complexity of real relationships and real memories. Behind the house is where I hang the clothes. The rope is tied between the neem tree and the water pump. I can smell the jasmine from there every morning. That's where I was when... She stopped abruptly, her face paling. When what, sweetheart? When the pain started, Kavya whispered, her small hand instinctively moving to her stomach. The day I had to leave them all behind. Sarah's breath caught. The day Mira died in childbirth, the day Kavya was born. That evening, Sarah sat alone on the flat rooftop of the Sharma house, staring at stars that seemed impossibly bright in the desert sky. Her laptop glowed in the darkness, cursor blinking mockingly over an empty research document. How could she possibly write about what she'd witnessed today? Below, she could hear Kavya crying softly in her sleep, calling out, Ravi, Beta, and Priya, my little bird, in heartbroken whispers. The sounds cut through Sarah's scientific training like a blade through paper. Doctor? Ramesh climbed onto the roof, carrying 2 cups of steaming chai. "You look troubled." Sarah accepted the tea gratefully. "In 15 years of research, I've never encountered anything like this. Usually, children offer vague details, mixed up stories. But Kavya?" She trailed off, unable to finish. "She describes places she's never seen," Ramesh said quietly. "Yesterday, she drew me a map of streets in a town 200 miles away. She knew which shops sell what, where the temple stands, even the color of the postmaster's house." Sarah felt her world tilting. Has she ever been there? Never. We've barely left this village. But she insists that's where her Arjun lives, where her children wait for their mother. Ramesh's voice broke. What kind of father am I to keep a child from her babies? The absurdity of that statement should have made Sarah laugh. Instead, it sent chills down her spine. She thought of her twin sister Priya, lost so many years ago, and the grief that never quite healed. What if love really could transcend death? What if some bonds were too strong for even mortality to break? "Take me there." Kavya's small voice came from behind them. She stood in her white nightgown like a tiny ghost, her dark eyes reflecting starlight. "Please, Sarah auntie, I know the way. I can show you." Sarah knelt to the child's level. "Kavya, it's very far. And what if we don't find what you're looking for?" The little girl touched Sarah's face with surprising gentleness. "You're afraid," she said with an uncanny insight. "Someone you loved went away too, didn't they?" Sarah's breath hitched. How could this child possibly know about Priya? "But sometimes," Kavya continued, "love finds a way to come back, even when it seems impossible." The next morning found them in Sarah's rental car, driving west toward the town of Jaisalmer. Kavya sat in the back seat, no longer crying, but speaking in a steady stream about the life she claimed to remember. "Arjun works at the grain market on Tuesday and Friday," she said, watching the landscape roll past. "He comes home smelling like wheat and sunshine. I always made sure to have water ready for him to wash his hands. He's very particular about that." Sarah caught the driver's eye in the mirror. The man's expression was a mixture of fascination and fear. "On festivals, I would make his favorite sweets. Gulab jamun with extra rose water. He would pretend to complain that they were too sweet, but I'd catch him sneaking extra pieces when he thought I wasn't looking." As they drove, Sarah found herself believing not just in the details, but in the love that colored every memory. This wasn't delusion. This was a soul in torment, separated from everything that had given life meaning. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked herself as much as Kavya. The child turned to her with ancient eyes. "I've been ready for 3 years, auntie. I've been waiting to go home." The dusty road stretched ahead, leading them toward an impossible reunion that would change everything Sarah thought she knew about life, death, and the power of love to conquer both. The ancient town of Jaisalmer rose from the golden sand like a mirage, its sandstone walls glowing amber in the afternoon sun. Sarah's hands trembled on the steering wheel as they entered the narrow streets, her rational mind making one last desperate attempt to explain away what was about to happen. "Turn left at the blue shop," Kavya said from the back seat, her voice suddenly calm and sure. "Then right where the old banyan tree grows through the wall." Sarah followed the directions, her heart pounding. The child had never been here, yet she navigated these maze-like streets with the confidence of someone returning home. "There," Kavya whispered, pointing to a modest house with faded yellow walls. "Stop here." Sarah parked and turned to look at the little girl. Kavya's face had transformed. Gone was the confused child, replaced by a woman returning to the place she loved most. Her small hands pressed against the car window as tears streamed down her cheeks. "The jasmine," she breathed. "It's grown so much." Sarah looked where Kavya pointed and felt her breath catch. There, beside a small window, was indeed a jasmine bush, heavy with white blooms that perfumed the air with their sweet scent. They stepped out of the car, and Kavya immediately ran to the front door, her tiny fists pounding against the weathered wood. "Arjun," she called in Hindi. "Arjun, I have come home." The door opened, and a man in his 30s appeared, tall, lean, with kind eyes, and Sarah noticed with a shock that ran through her like electricity, a thin scar above her left eyebrow. His face went white as he stared at the small girl before him. "Mira," he whispered, his voice breaking. "But you're so small, and my Mira died 3 years ago." "I know, my heart," Kavya said, using the exact tone a wife might use to comfort her husband. "Death took me from you, but love brought me back. Look at me, Arjun. Really look." As Sarah watched in stunned silence, something extraordinary happened. Despite the vast difference in their ages and bodies, the connection between them was unmistakable. The way Kavya tilted her head when she spoke to him, the gentle way she wiped tears from his cheeks, these were not the gestures of a child, but of a woman who had loved this man deeply. "You still bite your lip when you're thinking hard," Kavya observed with a soft laugh. "And you've lost weight. Have you been eating properly? You know you get headaches when you skip meals." Arjun sobbed openly now. "How do you know these things? How do you know me?" "Because I am yours, and you are mine," Kavya replied simply. "That doesn't change, not even with death." From inside the house came the sound of children's voices. "Papa, who is it?" called a young boy. Kavya's entire body went rigid with emotion. "Ravi," she whispered, then louder, "Ravi, beta, come to mama." A boy of about 5 appeared in the doorway, followed by a toddler with enormous dark eyes. The children stared at Kavya with the instinctive recognition that children possess. "Mama?" little Priya whispered, taking a tentative step forward. Kavya opened her arms, and both children ran to her without hesitation, as if some primal part of them knew exactly who she was, despite the impossible circumstances. Sarah watched this reunion with tears streaming down her face, her scientific skepticism finally, completely shattered. This wasn't performance or coincidence. This was love transcending every law of nature she had ever believed in. The impossible had become undeniable, and her world would never be the same again. Inside the small house, Sarah found herself surrounded by exactly what Kavya had described. Blue tiles with tiny white flowers adorned the kitchen walls. The red curtain with golden threads hung in the doorway. And there, on a wooden shelf, sat the wedding photograph of a radiant young woman in a yellow sari with green peacocks, and the man now cradling a 3-year-old who claimed to be his dead wife. Arjun's mother, a frail woman with silver hair, emerged from the back room and froze when she saw Kavya. Her weathered hands flew to her mouth as she whispered prayers in rapid Hindi. "Daddy!" Kavya exclaimed, using the affectionate term for grandmother. She ran to the old woman with arms outstretched. "You're wearing the blue bangles I gave you for your birthday." The elderly woman staggered, staring at her wrists where indeed thin blue glass bangles caught the light. "Mira chose these for me," she whispered to Arjun. "How could this child know?" Arjun settled heavily onto a low wooden stool, still in shock. "Tell me," he said to Kavya, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Tell me about the night you died." Sarah held her breath as Kavya's expression grew somber. The little girl climbed onto Arjun's lap with the familiarity of a wife, her small hands touching his face tenderly. "It was the monsoon season," she began,
her voice taking on the cadence of painful memory. I had been having pains all day, but I thought it was just the baby moving. You were so excited. You kept talking about whether it would be a boy or girl, and you'd already started building the new cradle. Arjun's eyes filled with fresh tears. I remember I was sanding the wood to make it smooth. The pains got worse after dinner. I went to bed early, but at midnight, I woke you up. The baby was coming too fast, too hard. You ran to get the midwife while your mother stayed with me. Sarah noticed Arjun's mother nodding, her face etched with the memory of that terrible night. But something went wrong, Kavya whispered. There was too much blood. I could feel myself getting weaker, like water draining from a broken pot. I held your hand and told you to name the baby Karen if it was a boy, Sunita if it was a girl. The baby didn't... Arjun couldn't finish the sentence. Kavya touched his cheek gently. No, my love. Our third child joined me in the next world that night. But before I left, I made a promise to return to you somehow. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving you alone with Ravi and Priya so young. The room fell silent except for quiet weeping. Even Sarah found herself crying for people she'd just met, moved by love so deep it had refused to accept death as final. I watched over you, Kavya said softly. I saw how you would sit by my grave and talk to me. I saw Ravi having nightmares and Priya refusing to eat. I saw you trying to be both mother and father, and my heart broke that I couldn't help you. Little Priya, who had been playing quietly on the floor, suddenly toddled over and climbed onto Kavya's other knee. "Mama sing," she demanded, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Without hesitation, Kavya began the lullaby Sarah had heard the day before. Chiriya Rani Urti Jai. But this time, Arjun joined in with a deep baritone, their voices blending in harmony that spoke of countless nights singing their children to sleep. Ravi snuggled closer, his small thumb finding his mouth, a gesture that made Kavya smile knowingly. He still does that when he's tired, and Priya still won't drink her milk unless it's warm just right. Sarah watched this impossible family scene, her academic mind finally surrendering completely. Some truths she realized could only be felt in the heart, never proven in a laboratory. Love had indeed found a way back from beyond death itself.
That evening, as the family settled into an impossible but natural routine, Kavya helping Priya eat dinner with the patience of a mother, singing Ravi to sleep with lullabies only Mira knew, Sarah found herself alone on the small rooftop terrace, her entire worldview in ruins around her. She pulled out her phone to call her department at Oxford, then put it away again. How could she possibly explain what she'd witnessed? That everything she'd spent her career debunking was not only real, but sitting downstairs, reading bedtime stories to children who called her mama without question. "You're thinking very hard," came a soft voice behind her. Sarah turned to find Kavya climbing up the narrow stairs, moving with surprising grace for a 3-year-old. In the moonlight, the child's face seemed older, wiser, the face of someone who had lived, loved, and lost everything. "I am," Sarah admitted. "You've turned my entire life upside down, little one." Kavya settled beside her on the low wall, swinging her tiny legs. "You don't believe in life after death because someone you loved didn't come back to you." Sarah's breath caught. "How do you—" "The pain calls to pain," Kavya said with ancient wisdom. "I see it in your eyes.
the same emptiness Arjun carried. Someone was taken from you too young, too suddenly. Tears Sarah had held back for decades began to fall. 28 years of buried guilt and grief pouring out under the star-filled desert sky. I've been so angry with God, with the universe, with every family who claimed their loved ones returned. Because if it's possible, if it really happens, then why didn't Priya? Who says she didn't? Kavya asked quietly. Sarah looked at the child through her tears. What do you mean? Love finds many ways to return, Kavya said, touching Sarah's hand with surprising warmth. Sometimes it's dramatic, like me finding my way back to Arjun, but sometimes it's quieter. Sometimes a soul returns not in flesh, but in the kindness of strangers, in unexpected moments of beauty, in the courage to help others when we cannot help ourselves. You think, Sarah's voice broke, you think Priya? I think your sister's love has been with you always, Kavya said with certainty that defied her young age. Why else would you spend your life studying families torn apart by loss? Why else would you travel the world looking for proof that love survives death? You weren't trying to debunk reincarnation, Sarah Auntie. You were searching for your sister. The truth hit Sarah like lightning. Every case she'd investigated, every family she'd questioned, every moment she spent trying to prove these stories false, she'd actually been hoping desperately to find them true. She'd been looking for Priya in every child who claimed to remember another life. She guided you here, Kavya continued, to witness what you needed to see, to understand that death is not the end of love, it's just another beginning. Your Priya didn't need to return in a new body because her love never left yours. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, like a knot that had been tied for decades, finally loosening. The guilt she'd carried, that she should have saved her sister, that she'd somehow failed, began to dissolve under the weight of a larger truth. Some souls returned to heal what was left broken, Kavya whispered, echoing words she'd spoken days earlier. I came back to heal Arjun's broken heart, and maybe you were meant to witness this to heal your own. For the first time in 28 years, Sarah felt her sister's presence not as an absence, but as a gentle warmth surrounding her. In every act of kindness she'd shown grieving families, in every moment of compassion she'd offered despite her own pain, in the love that had driven her to seek truth even when she feared finding it, Priya had been with her all along.
The next morning, Sarah sat at Arjun's small kitchen table, surrounded by documents, photographs, and witness testimonies that should have been impossible to verify, yet every single detail checked out with terrifying precision. This is Mira's death certificate, Arjun said quietly, placing the official document before her. July 15th, 2021, 2:47 a.m. Sarah's hands trembled as she compared it to Kavya's birth certificate from the Sharma family. July 15th, 2021, 2:52 a.m., she read aloud. 5 minutes after Mira died, Kavya was born 200 miles away. The mathematical precision of it sent chills down her spine. In her 15 years of research, she'd seen families manipulate dates, coach children, even forge documents. But this was different. The hospital records were authentic, verified by multiple sources, and the timing was exact to the minute. Here, said Mrs. Patel, an elderly neighbor who had come to bear witness, this is the photograph Mira kept by her bedside. She handed Sarah a faded picture of 2 children, a boy and a girl, laughing in a garden. Sarah showed the photo to Kavya, who was playing quietly in the corner. The child's face lit up immediately. That's my Ravi and Priya. I took that picture last Holi when Priya got covered in blue powder and looked like a little Krishna. Mrs. Patel gasped. How could she know that? The photograph shows them laughing because Priya had just been doused with color powder during the festival. But there's no blue visible in this black and white photo. Sarah's pen scratched furiously across her notebook. every verification led to 10 more impossible confirmations. She interviewed the postmaster Kavya had mentioned, a man with a bright red house who confirmed that Mira often sent letters to her parents in distant villages. She spoke with the green merchant who employed Arjun on Tuesdays and Fridays, exactly as Kavya had said. Mira always packed him extra rotis. She said he worked too hard and forgot to eat. She'd send little containers of her famous pickle. Nobody could make it quite like her. "The green mango pickle," Kavya called out from across the room, although she hadn't been part of the conversation, "with extra fenugreek seeds, just like Dottie taught me." Sarah's academic mind reeled. These weren't broad generalizations or lucky guesses. These were intimate, specific details that painted a complete picture of a life made fully and remembered perfectly. That afternoon, she visited the local temple, where the priest, without prompting, confirmed that Mira had donated a brass lamp for the evening prayers. He said, "She said it was to thank the goddess for blessing her with 2 healthy children. The lamp is still here. We light it every evening." When Sarah described this to Kavya, the little girl nodded matter-of-factly. "I wanted Ravi and Priya to always have light watching over them, even when I couldn't." By evening, Sarah had documented over 50 specific details, cross-referenced with official records, witness testimonies, and physical evidence. Her laptop screen glowed with an impossible truth. Every single claim had been verified. Not one contradiction. Not one error, not one detail that could be explained away. She stared at her research, knowing it represented the end of one life and the beginning of another. Publishing this would destroy her reputation among skeptics, but revolutionized how the world understood consciousness, death, and the possibility of survival beyond physical existence. Frightening, isn't it? When everything you thought you knew turns out to be wrong. Arjun sat down beside her, offering a cup of chai. "Not wrong," Sarah corrected quietly. "Incomplete. I spent so long looking for proof that these stories were false because I couldn't bear the thought that they might be true. And now?" Sarah looked across the room where Kavya was braiding little Priya's hair with the practiced hands of a mother, humming the same lullaby she'd sung to put Ravi to sleep. The scene was so natural, so right, that it brought tears to her eyes. "Now I have to decide if I'm brave enough to tell the world that love really is stronger than death." Her phone buzzed with messages from Oxford, colleagues wondering about her extended absence. Soon, she would have to choose. Return to her old life of comfortable skepticism, or step into an unknown future where impossible things were simply waiting to be understood. On the 3rd day, as Sarah prepared to document what would be her final interviews, Kavya approached Arjun with an expression more serious than any 3-year-old should possess. "My beloved," she said, using the endearment that still made him catch his breath, "I have things I must tell you, messages I was meant to deliver." The family gathered in the small living room, somehow sensing this would be significant. Sarah positioned herself quietly in the corner, her recorder running, knowing she was about to witness something extraordinary. Kavya climbed onto Arjun's lap and placed her small hands on either side of his face. "First, for your mother," she said, turning to the elderly woman. "Dottie, you must stop blaming yourself for our arguments. I know you thought I wasn't good enough for your son, but in my heart, I understood you were protecting the most precious thing in your world." Arjun's mother began to weep. "Mira, I was so cruel to you. I said things. You said I was too young, too headstrong, that I would never learn to be a proper wife," Kavya continued gently. "But you also taught me how to make Arjun's favorite dal when he was sick. You showed me which herbs to use for Ravi's cough. You loved me in your way, and I forgive you everything." The old woman collapsed in grateful sobs, and Sarah felt tears streaming down her own face. No 3-year-old could have known about family tensions that predated her birth. Yet Kavya spoke with the wisdom of someone who had lived through these conflicts and found peace beyond them. "For my Ravi," Kavya said, turning to the little boy who sat watching with wide eyes, "you're allergic to mustard oil, beta. Remember this when you're older and someone offers you food outside our home. Your stomach hurts when you eat it, but you're too polite to say no." Arjun stared in shock. "We only discovered that allergy 6 months ago, after Mira died. He got sick at a neighbor's house, but we never told anyone about it." "And my sweet Priya," Kavya continued, gently stroking the toddler's hair, "when you're old enough to marry, look behind the loose brick in the kitchen wall, 3rd row from the floor, near the water pump. There's a small cloth bag hidden there." "What kind of bag?" Arjun asked, his voice barely a whisper. "My grandmother's gold earrings and the pearl necklace my mother gave me on our wedding day. I hid them there for Priya's wedding, so she would have something beautiful from her mother's family to wear on her special day." Without hesitation, Arjun rushed to the kitchen wall. Sarah followed, her heart pounding. He counted up 3 rows from the floor, felt along the bricks near the water pump, and found one that moved slightly. Behind it was indeed a small cloth bag, yellowed with age. Inside were exquisite gold earrings shaped like lotus flowers and a delicate pearl necklace that caught the light like captured moonbeams. "I hid these the week before I died," Kavya said softly as they returned to the living room. "I wanted to make sure Priya would have something special, something that connected her to the women who came before her." Arjun collapsed onto his knees, clutching the jewelry. No one alive knew about this hiding place. No one could have coached a child to reveal this secret. But Kavya wasn't finished. She said, her small voice growing heavy with emotion, "Arjun, my love, you must promise me something." "Anything," he whispered. "You must learn to love again. Not to replace me. No one could ever do that, but to give Ravi and Priya the mother they deserve in this life. I've seen the teacher at Ravi's school, Miss Sharma. She's kind, gentle, and she already cares for our children. When you're ready, not now, but someday, don't let guilt or fear stop you from opening your heart." Sarah watched as Kavya delivered this final message with the grace of a dying woman blessing her husband's future happiness. It was perhaps the most profound act of love she had ever witnessed. A soul returning not to claim what was hers, but to set her beloved free to love again. "I will love you always," Kavya concluded, "but I want you to be happy, to laugh again, to give our children the full family they deserve. This is not goodbye, it's my blessing on your tomorrow." In that moment, surrounded by impossible revelations and messages that could only have come from beyond death itself, Sarah understood that she wasn't just witnessing reincarnation, she was witnessing the ultimate triumph of selfless love over the fear of being forgotten. The morning sun filtered through the jasmine flowers in Arjun's garden as Kavya sat quietly on the wooden swing, her small hands gripping the ropes. Sarah watched from the doorway, noting how the child's expressions had begun to shift between the innocent wonder of a 3-year-old and the profound melancholy of a woman who had loved deeply and lost everything. "Dr. Chin," Kavya said softly, her voice carrying that unsettling mixture of childish lisp and mature understanding. "The memories, they're getting cloudy, like looking through water." Sarah approached carefully, her notebook forgotten for once. Over the past few weeks, she had documented everything with scientific precision, but now she found herself simply present with this extraordinary child who had shattered every certainty she'd built her career upon. "Is that frightening?" Sarah asked, settling beside Kavya on the swing. Kavya considered this with the gravity of someone much older. "A little. But Mira, the lady I remember being, she's telling me it's time." She paused, watching Ravi and Priya chase butterflies in the garden. "She says holding on too tight hurts everyone." From inside the house came the sound of quiet conversation between the two families. The Sharmas, Kavya's birth parents, had arrived that morning after days of heart-wrenching discussions. They stood in the kitchen with Arjun and his mother, all of them grappling with an impossible situation that had no precedent, no roadmap to follow. "What do you want, Kavya?" Sarah found herself asking, although she immediately questioned whether a 3-year-old could truly comprehend such a monumental choice. But Kavya's response revealed the ancient wisdom that had been emerging more frequently. "I want everyone to be happy. I want Arjun to remember that love doesn't end, just changes shape. I want Ravi and Bria to grow up knowing their mama loved them so much she found a way to say goodbye properly." Her voice broke slightly. "And I want my other mama and papa to know that loving two families doesn't make either love smaller." Sarah felt tears stinging her eyes. This child was teaching her something she'd spent decades avoiding, that some truths transcended logic, that love operated by laws science couldn't measure or explain. "I've been selfish," Kavya said, her young face serious, "staying here because it feels good to be loved that way again. But Mira's children need to learn to remember her without needing her to be here. And Kavya's parents, they're scared they're losing their daughter to a ghost." The profound maturity in those words sent chills down Sarah's spine. She was witnessing something unprecedented, not just reincarnation, but a soul choosing to heal rather than cling, to love rather than possess. "When will you decide?" Sarah whispered. Kavya smiled, and for a moment she was purely a 3-year-old again. "Tonight, under the stars, where Mira and Arjun used to make wishes." That evening, as purple twilight painted the sky above Jaisalmer, an extraordinary gathering took place in Arjun's small garden. Both families sat in a circle under the jasmine tree, with little Kavya at the center, her presence somehow filling the space with inexplicable peace. Sarah stood at the edge of the garden, her recorder forgotten, simply witnessing what she knew would be the most profound moment of her life. She thought of her own sister Priya, lost so many years ago, and felt a strange comfort in the possibility that love truly did transcend death. Kavya took Arjun's weathered hands in her tiny ones. "My beloved," she said, and everyone present felt the weight of a woman speaking through a child. "I need you to listen carefully." Arjun nodded, tears already streaming down his face. "Mira's love for you didn't die with her body. It grew stronger, wider, like a river flowing into the ocean." Her voice was gentle but certain. "But holding on to yesterday keeps you from seeing tomorrow's gifts. You have so much love left to give, Arjun. Don't waste it grieving for someone who never truly left." She turned to Ravi, now 5, and Priya, barely 3. "My precious ones, your mama lives in every kind thing you do. Every time you help someone who's sad, every time you choose love over anger. She's not gone. She's become part of who you are." Sarah watched as Kavya embraced each family member, somehow managing to comfort grieving hearts while preparing for her own departure. The child moved with purpose, delivering messages that brought closure to old wounds, forgiveness to lingering resentments, and hope to despairing hearts. Finally, Kavya turned to her birth parents, the Sharmas, who had been silently weeping throughout this impossible farewell. "Mama, Papa, I'm still your little girl. The lady's memories made me wiser, but they didn't change who I belong to. I want to come home and learn to be just Kavya,
to play with dolls and learn to read, and maybe become a doctor like Dr. Chin. The relief and joy on their faces was palpable. As the families began their goodbyes, Kavya approached Sarah one final time. "Doctor," she said quietly, "will you help other families like ours? There are more children like me, more love stories that need witnesses instead of skeptics." Sarah knelt to meet the child's eyes, seeing clearly the profound transformation this experience had wrought within herself. Her life's work of debunking claims felt small and cynical compared to the possibility of helping families navigate the impossible with compassion and wonder. "Yes," Sarah whispered, "I will." As the Sharma's car pulled away with Kavya waving from the back window, Sarah remained in the garden with Arjun and his children. The jasmine flowers released their evening fragrance, and somewhere in the gathering darkness, she could have sworn she heard the sound of gentle laughter. Whether from the living or the departed, she no longer needed to know. Sarah had arrived in Rajasthan as a skeptical academic, determined to debunk another false claim. She would leave as a changed woman, carrying the knowledge that love operates by laws far more powerful than those found in textbooks. Some truths, she now understood, could only be felt with the heart, and that was more than enough.